Hi there, I'm Leslie, and I am going to be explaining what to do when you start preparing to write an essay, the very first thing to do. So, when your teacher gives you the assignment and you get home and your job is to start the essay, then a lot of times people can get stuck on, well, I don't know how to start, so I'm just going to put it off, and it leads to procrastination, and then writing becomes this really, really painful thing. Well, I want to take some of the pain out of that by giving you a way to um, start starting. Basically, just how to get started. Okay, so when you're given an essay, of course, you're given an essay question. So I'm going to give you an essay question to think about. And this is an essay question. It reads, Atticus Finch receives a high level of both criticism and praise in the town of Maycomb. Is he a character deserving of criticism or praise? And this question is, of course, from the novel. Uh, let's see, let's put this in this. Let her take that off. Put it all not in italics, and let's put the LA mocking. Okay, that's of course the title of the novel. So I'm going to be writing a lot and talking a lot as I go through this because I want to make sure that you understand why I'm doing what I'm doing when I'm doing it. Okay, so you get the essay question. This is assuming that you've read the story, but whatever story you get or whatever your question is, if it's responsive literature or if it's persuasive writing, the first thing you want to do is actually answer the sentence in 1 to 2 sentences, or however many sentences it takes to just answer the question, because sometimes essays may be multi-question. But in this case, I want you to find the actual thing that you're being asked here. And this is not the question. It's part of the topic of the question, but this is the actual question, right? So this is the question that we have to answer. So in my opinion, I'd say he's a character deserving of praise. So I'm just going to write, he's a character deserving of praise. Okay? The reason why we answer the question first when you're working on an essay, you don't start writing the introduction, you don't start writing body paragraphs, you don't start with any of that. You start by knowing what the answer to your question is. And the answer to your question is what we call the thesis. Okay? Or it may be called the thesis sentence. Okay? And this thesis sentence is the most important. It's so important, I'm going to put it in a different color. But it's the most important sentence in your whole essay because everything else should support your thesis sentence. Okay? A lot of times you can get into, flowery language or just off in no man's land and you won't even realize it. But if you can look at your thesis sentence as kind of like your shining light, what everything else in the essay supports, then you're off to a really good start. So it's really important that you spend time on answering the question well. Well, fortunately for this essay, this is a pretty straightforward um, question, so you can have a pretty straightforward answer. But the way that I do the thesis sentence, or at least when I'm working with someone who doesn't have a whole lot of experience writing. So first, let's just say that we've given the definition, and the definition is the answer to your essay question, right? That's what the thesis sentence is, okay? The next thing we're going to talk about is phrasing it, okay? So you just put as much, I'm going to write this as simply as possible. So all this stuff in here, as much language as many words as there are from the question as you can put in the answer, we want to do that. And that's for the sake of clarity. And as you become fancy in your writing, you can choose to do that or not do that. But when you're just learning, it's best to just stick with the most basic structure possible to make sure that you're really answering the question, because it doesn't matter how great your language is or how great your support is if it's not actually supporting the point. that you set out to prove. Okay? So we want to phrase it as similarly to the essay question as possible. And the way that I do thesis sentences, I include 9 times out of 10 or 9.9 times out of 10, I include a because statement after the answer. And I'm going to show you how we put it all together in a minute. Okay? And that because statement should be followed by 2 to 3 reasons. Okay? So let's take a look at what that is, what that looks like so far. Okay? So we're going to phrase it first as similarly to the essay question. So first of all, let's go all the way back. You've been given the essay question. You're at home. You're at your desk. What do you do first? The very first thing you do is you write your thesis sentence. Okay? So we're working on getting that, and we kind of have one, but now we need a formal working essay-worthy thesis sentence, okay? So we're going to phrase it as similarly to the essay question as possible. So we're going to say, Atticus Finch is and I'm using as much wording from this question as I can, is a character deserving of praise, and then I'm going to say because. All right, so I'm gonna leave this here just so you see it, but you see like kind of where we're going from this to answering it kind of like we'd answer it if we were talking about it, to actually this is how we're going to write it. Okay, and let me make this a little bit bigger, because so now we have to actually have reason. So that we've answered the question, but now we have to take it a step further and say why we think this. Okay, now there are 2 ways you can handle this. If you're more middle school level, you're really just writing your first essay, you're just learning about this, your teacher may be cool with you giving shorter answers. So, but you have to, give a reason why you're saying he's a character deserving of praise. So we could say because he is smart, caring, and courageous. So these are 3 reasons, okay? Now, if you're more advanced, if you're in maybe 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade, your teacher may expect a little bit more, or even if it's your first essay and you feel like you want to go above and beyond. So let's bring this here, and I'm going to show you a different way to do this. Let's expand each answer more. So let's say how he is smart. Okay. Let's say because he allows, I'm trying to think of why I think he's smart. And I think he's really smart because and you may have a different reason, but here's what I'm thinking. Because he allows his children to learn experientially. Okay. And notice instead of commas between each reason, I'm using semicolons. And the reason why I'm using semicolons is because they provide a little bit more of a pause, since we're using a little bit more detailed answers, okay? And you want pauses in between if you're going to give several reasons, okay? He allows his children to learn. Now, how do I think he's caring? What does he do that's caring? Well, he holds, this is my reason, he holds himself to a high moral standard. And I'm going to be detailed here. Even when doing so proves uncomfortable. And I'm not writing down for you all. I'm writing like how I'd actually, write myself. And all the language isn't going to be perfect. When you're just, starting out, and this is pre-writing. This isn't even our first draft yet. It's not going to be perfect. Now, some of this I've already prepared because I wanted to, have something, an example that you'd actually be able to follow. But when you first start writing, it's not going to come out pretty. You may say, instead of he allows his children to learn experientially, you might say he lets his kids, learn by making mistakes. That's fine. It doesn't matter as long as you have some reasons down. That's fine. or even if you're starting with this simpler version, that's fine too. Okay, but don't worry about having the language just right. It's not really possible to have the language just right the first time around. Okay, now how do I think he's courageous? I'm going to say, and he puts himself in danger to save his loved ones. Okay, and I'm not crazy about the way this sounds, but you know what? I'm not going to stress over it, just because I know I can say this better. Instead of saying, and he puts himself in danger, just a better way. I know I can say it, but in the interest of getting the words down on paper right now, I'm going to leave it. Okay? So now what we have here is, okay, now we know where we're going to go with this, with our essay. So this is the very first thing that you do when you're starting an essay. And I hope that this is helpful. And I'll see you all again soon.